Hello, my name is Elizabeth Kenny and I work for a non-government organisation that provides ongoing support to trafficking victims around East Europe. After thorough investigation into the sex trafficking of women in Moldova, I have compiled a briefing to the business party outlining the issues and my recommendations. Article 3, Paragraph A of the Protocol to Prevent, Suppress and Punish Trafficking in Persons defines trafficking in persons as the recruitment, transportation, transfer, harbouring or receipt of persons by means of the threat or use of force or other forms of coercion, of abduction, of fraud, of deception, of the abuse of power or of a position of vulnerability, or the giving or receiving of payment or benefits to achieve the consent of a person having control over another person for the purpose of exploitation. Exploitation shall include, at a minimum, the exploitation of the prostitution of others or the other forms of sexual exploitation, forced labour or services, slavery or practices similar to slavery, servitude, or the removal of organs. First and foremost, human trafficking is a violation of human rights. Human trafficking in Moldova dates back centuries, having battled foreign occupation, social upheaval, and economic downturn leading to poverty and desperation. After the 1989 upheavals, which led to the eventual breakdown of the communist regimes in Eastern Europe, growth resumed. However, poverty levels remained high and the past achievements in social welfare came under pressure. Approximately 80% of Moldovan households in 2006 remained unable to generate a subsistent level income of $48 per month or $1.60 per day. This dire poverty led to Moldovans desperately seeking any opportunity in employment in order to survive, including external employment in Western Europe. Four groups of women are particularly vulnerable to poverty and hence vulnerable to falling victim to human traffickers. These include divorced women with children, single mothers, elderly single women, and women of minority groups including Muslims and Roma. The everyday existence of trafficked women is one of isolation, lack of community, and lack of freedom. Trafficking of women generates a market value of $7 billion annually. Women in Moldova are repressed politically, economically, and socially, and the Moldovan government does little to protect its women. Many Moldovan trafficking victims are subject to rape, beatings, and psychological abuse at the hands of their husbands, uncles, and fathers, with 7 out of 10 trafficking victims citing despair caused by domestic violence as the primary factor in their accepting proposals to travel abroad. False advertisements are utilised in 8 of 10 trafficking cases. Advertisements promising the opportunity to study in the United States, United Kingdom, or Italy fill the twice-weekly classifieds newspaper called the Makler. However, these advertisements promote false hope, as travel agencies are not licensed for study abroad programs, and organised crime networks use Medium as a front to procure new slaves. Ironically, placed on tables in a US fast food chain in Chisinau, the capital of Moldova, are advertisements for a pick-me-up meal alluding to the power of men over women with captions stating, "Boys will be boys, and it will give you power." From the mid-1990s until around 2002, most Moldovans were trafficked directly to the Balkan region, Russia, or Italy. Since then, 97% of trafficked women have said to be trafficked internationally to such places like Russia, Turkey, and the United Arab Emirates. Isabel, a young Moldovan woman trafficked to Turkey, retells her story while sobbing profusely throughout the interview. When I was 19, I was studying interior design in Chisinau. My father died and there was no one to support me. I saw a posting in the university newspaper for a job in house cleaning. The agent for the posting, Angela, promised a salary of $500 per month. Angela paid for my passport and sent me on an autobus to Istanbul. 6 other girls came with me. In Istanbul, a man named Yuri met us at the station. He took us to a hotel called Meki. I will never forget that hotel. Yuri took our passports and said, "You must shower and get dressed. Tonight you will go to your first program." I thought he meant we will go to a house cleaning, so I did as he said. That night, Yuri sold us to a German man. He raped us in the hotel with 5 other men. They made us have sex with many men that night. The Germans made me work like this for 16 months. I was kept locked into a hotel room with 3 other girls. One client who came was a lawyer. His name was Farouk, and he offered to buy me from the German. The German sold me for 4,000 euros. Farouk kept me locked with chains in a room in his home, and he forced me to have sex with men who visited. If I complained, he would cut me with a knife. After 2 months, I told him I was pregnant. He unchained me and let me live more freely in the home. He said he would marry me. I did not want to marry Farouk, so I made my mind to escape. I saw a program on television about Moldovans trafficked to Turkey and an organization that offered to help them return to Moldova. This organization was in Ankara, so when Farouk went to his office, I took an autobus and went to this organization. I did not have a passport, so they gave me a white passport to return to Moldova. I returned on July the 13th, 2005. My son was born on October the 3rd, 2005. Isabel fears that any day the traffickers might track her down and harm her or her son. Although Isabel is free from sex slavery, her life is still a prison. Most trafficking victims return to the same conditions of poverty and lack of economic opportunity that promoted the trafficking to begin with. Therefore, an increasing number of individuals are trafficked numerous times. Increasingly, due to corruption of government officials, judicial and law enforcement entities, as well as police and border control guards, trafficking victims are smuggled out of Moldova using legal documents, which makes the victim virtually invisible, thus rendering protection almost impossible. As borders are loosened, particularly as East European countries are added to the EU, individuals who lack the financial resources to migrate through proper channels will fall prey to cheap offers of assistance from front organisations for slave trade networks. This corruption also extends to the criminalisation and punishment or lack thereof of traffickers. Although Moldova has passed anti-trafficking legislation in 2004, Moldovan courts handed down 16 convictions for trafficking in persons, 75 for pimping, and 7 for trafficking in children. Of these 95 total cases, only 16 involved prison time, and none of the traffickers were fined. So where to now? Much debate revolves around the criminalisation or decriminalisation of prostitution. Criminalisation and changing immigration laws may drive activities further underground or shift activities to another country. Criminalisation also leads to the risk of punishment of trafficked sex slaves, as well as promoting a stigmatisation of these girls. The arguments for decriminalisation suggest that zoning, licensing, and compulsory health checks would provide the much needed help for the girls, however, would not stop trafficking altogether. It is clear that Moldova relies on the remittances from migrant workers, including that of trafficked persons, as a substantial part of the country's income, with the total sum of remittances to Moldova in 2006 in excess of $500 million, equivalent to approximately 25% of the entire Moldovan economy, therefore making the Moldovan government reluctant to change their immigration laws. In essence, human trafficking is a violation of human rights, which impinges upon the liberties and freedoms of the people subjected to the harsh physical and emotional trauma involved in the trafficking network. Many of the trafficked women, or should I say girls, are underage, forced into performing horrendous sexual acts, and are most often physically beaten and abused by their so-called protectors. Many of these girls are lucky to make it out alive, and some are not so fortunate.